This conference will now be recorded.
Special meeting of the Board of Directors of West Basin Municipal Water District will end at 12:33. And I call the meeting to order and determine that we don't yet have a quorum. We only have 2 board members on board. Well,
we actually do. We have 3. We have Director Houston's on board.
Oh, Scott. Oh, good. Excellent. So we do have a quorum, and we have 3 members present. And is there any public comments?
I've not received any requests for public comments.
All right. How about the people called in? Do they have anything? Guess not. All right. Discussion items. Item 4.
Okay. So again, we have the pleasure, the honor of having Jeff Keithlinger, General Manager of Metropolitan Water District, to present on a few different items. I'll let him introduce them. And Jeff, it's been a pleasure having you do these caucus meetings with us the last several years. You may be one of the last ones you're going to do with us, but we're very, very happy and, like I said, honored to have you present today. Thank you for all your presentations thus far, at least during my tenure.
Well, thank you for the kind words, Patrick, and it's my pleasure to be here. I see Devin made it. He had a potential conflict, but since he made it, I'll have him do some of the talking. I thought I would give you folks an update on a couple of items that in the agenda that I think we have for June. We're having a board letter. I don't believe it's come out yet, but it'll be issued shortly on a number of LRP projects, and we had discussed with the board a process approach to those LRP projects that are experiencing some delays. We have an interesting item on Palo Verde Irrigation District, a partnership that we're proposing to the board this month. And finally, we have wanted to update the board on a letter of support. We're working with the Chino Basin folks and IEUA Inland Empire on a potential project out there. Wanted to give the board some feedback on that. But I think the most important thing to kind of update the board on right now is how the drought's shaping up across California. We're seeing, obviously, this is potentially one of the worst years in California recorded history in terms of snowpack, in terms of water supply and runoff. Most interesting is while the snowpack wasn't as bad as it was in the 2014-15 period, the runoff is actually worse, meaning that the water from the snowpack is not reaching the reservoirs. And it's, these are some of the conditions we're also seeing work out across the whole American Southwest, not just California. But what you're seeing is that the water and the snowpack is, first, it's evaporating more rapidly with higher heat. It's and then it's sublimating in the soil and not reaching the streams and reservoirs, being soaked up by hot soil and dry soil. And so you're seeing very low runoff numbers that are pretty historically low, that we've never seen this low before. What that's resulted in is, and the fact also in 14-15, even though we had a 4-year drought cycle during that period, people kind of forget last year was a 20% year. Even we've only had 2 years in recorded history on the State Water Project, so that's about 60 years worth of data. In the last 60 years, we've had 2 years less than 20%. In fact, most of our planning was thinking that a 20% allocation on the State Water Project was the low. We thought that was the floor, and we could plan drought planning around that. And then in 2014-15, we had a 5% allocation, and this year we'll also have a 5% allocation. So it seems like our new floor is 5% or less. And so that is a historic number. Well, last year was 20%. So one of the lower years ever on the State Water Project. And then now we're backing it up with the lowest year we've ever seen, tying 2015. So the back-to-back dry years that we've had, this is the driest 2-year period that we've ever seen on the State Water Project. What that means is there wasn't much storage in San Luis and Oroville reservoirs going into this drought. Same with Shasta on the federal side and Folsom and the federal reservoirs. And so with low storage going into the drought and then a historic dry year, it's resulted in very little water to move around the system. Now, the good news is Metropolitan, as you're all aware, had very robust reserves and very robust supplies. And so when the governor was making as he's made his emergency declarations for drought throughout California, has pretty much excluded Southern California from these issues, knowing that Metropolitan is well positioned to manage. And we don't see any issues with meeting all demand obligations this year, and realistically, probably for next year as well. But even though we have very significant reserves, we had basically going into this drought, we had roughly 4 million acre feet in reserves, of which about 700,000 of that's reserved for emergency usage, and leaving about 3.2, a little more, for drought management purposes. This kind of drought in this kind of year will basically pull close to about 500,000 acre feet out of those reserves. And so that leaves us, as you can see, another 2+ million acre feet probably at the end of this year, which, you know, when you think about it, 500,000 acre feet being a significant pull, it's like as if we had 5 historic dry years in a row, we'd have reserves. Obviously, we don't want to run our reserves to empty, and we'd be taking actions before we got there. But it shows that we have a significant cushion and that we are well positioned and well prepared for this kind of drought cycle. That said, it's still a challenge. The plumbing is a challenge when you have very little on the state water project going north to south. DWR operates many of the storage programs and many of how they move water around through exchanges. But when you have very little water in the system, there's very little to exchange with. And so there's all sorts of plumbing and challenges in terms of managing the supplies and moving that around. So our staff's been working very closely with other agencies outside our system, working closely with our member agencies, trying to ensure that we preserve as much state water project as possible for some certain pockets of our system that can only reserve state project water, maximizing our deliveries of Colorado River water, and taking all sorts of operational actions to help manage the drought. And we're also seeing this drought play out, not just California, which is more severe and more impactful and more in the news, but we're seeing it on the Colorado River as well. We've had 20 years of drought. We're probably going into next year, and I say probably, I should say certainly, we are going to see the first ever shortage declared on the Colorado River. That's going to have impacts for Arizona. It will have political impacts as well. And one of the items we have today I want to talk about is a good partnership opportunity that Metropolitan has with Palo Verde and others. But I thought I'd wrap up on the drought issues and some of the operational issues by having Devin talk a little bit more detail on that and some of the concerns we're working out with DWR and how we can help the state manage some of the issues as well. So Devin, do you want to add some more color and detail on that?
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Maybe to add a little bit to the background Jeff has provided, we have been in discussions with the state about the conditions. Unfortunately, they've been worsening conditions as they keep updating their river flow forecast to look at runoff patterns. And every time they're updating it, they've had to reduce the projection for the year. So you may have seen some of the announcements just in the last week and a half or 2 weeks that the Cvp allocation was actually reduced. And this is very uncommon that you would see a reduction like that this late in the year, particularly as agricultural contractors have already made planting decisions for the years. And so now they're seeing their water supply reduced, and that comes at a cost to the plants that they've put into the ground and we're expecting to be able to supply with water. So it's a pretty dramatic situation. I think one thing that we've been in discussions with DWR about is the way that they're operating Lake Oroville. And because they're in a discussion with the State Water Resources Control Board about these operations and how dry the conditions have been, they submitted a request to the state board for what's known as a temporary urgency change petition to change the regulatory structure for the Delta for such dry conditions through the summertime. And the state board looked at that and they provided tentative approval for these changed conditions for the summer just 2 days ago. So it's not final, but tentative. And the issue really is salinity in the Delta. When you can imagine conditions that are so dry, and state water project pumping that is really only at a health and safety level right now. So they can't really cut it back any further than that. It's just a couple hundred CFS that they're pumping. You start to see more influence of the tides coming into the Delta and influencing the salinity in the Delta. And that's been the concern there. So they are installing what's known as a salinity barrier. This is, I don't have a visual for you, but if you can imagine an aerial view of the Delta, they're actually taking rocks and they're putting them into, I believe it's 2 areas, water flows in the Delta to prevent salinity intrusion into the Delta. This is something that you only implement in the most extreme dry years to try to prevent that salinity intrusion. And in addition to those things, they've asked all of the contractors to take actions that they can to reduce their flows on that are coming out of the Delta, which is why we had worked with the board, and the board approved last month a program that would assist in offsetting costs for agencies that can shift from state water project supplies to other stored water supplies from us or Colorado River deliveries. And really the big player there is the city of Los Angeles, and we're working with them. I understand that they have to take that agreement to their commission, so they're going to be doing that, and hopefully we'll be able to get those operations underway. So we've already reported on many of the other operational things that we're doing, really some firsts for us this year, but those continue to be in place and will probably likely continue all the way into 2022. As a reminder, the Mills treatment plant, which is a state water project only treatment plant, this year, just about a month and a half ago, we completely removed it from the state water project system. We put bulkheads into DWR Santa Ana Valley pipeline, and we are now backflowing water from Diamond Valley Lake up to that treatment plant. And the operations are going very smoothly, but I didn't know that we would ever see that kind of an operation in my tenure at Metropolitan. It's been that extreme an event, and it's real kudos to the operations team to be able to do something like that, to completely take, a giant treatment plant like that off of the state water project system and just deliver stored water to it. Our pump back system with the Gregg Avenue pumping facility is completing its testing, and soon will be pumping on a day in, day out basis Colorado River water up into the west side of our system. And as I had mentioned earlier, we hope to be getting that shift program with the city of Los Angeles underway soon. So pretty significant actions that we've taken. And maybe the final marker I would throw out there for you to understand what's happening at the state level is, you might recall that we had talked with the board about acquiring some transfer supplies earlier this year. One of those deals is a long-term deal that we've signed on with a number of other agencies in the Yuba County Water Agency. And the other one was a short-term deal, some transfers that we were looking at purchasing this year. And we've received word that both of those sets of transfer supplies may even be cut back. They may not be able to provide those supplies this year. So pretty significant events, a marker of how dry conditions have really been. But I would emphasize with Jeff's comments that we've been able to utilize our stored supplies this year, and we're able to manage through 2021, and looking forward to 2022 and making sure that we're set up for 2022 in the same way.
So I'll just wrap up with a couple of comments and then move over to one item on the agenda I wanted to cover that's directly drought related. And then I was thinking I would pause there. Director Deere, Director Williams, and let there be questions, and then move through a couple other items that Met's working on. So you're going to see most of the impacts statewide are going to be felt in the agricultural sector. Now, Metropolitan's better prepared than, say, the Bay Area, but they're well prepared as well. And so you're seeing the Bay Area looking at voluntary restrictions at the moment and not mandatory rationing, et cetera. They don't have the reserves that Metropolitan and Southern California has, but they're pretty well prepared, and they're managing through this as well. But you've already seen reports of about 20% of the North Delta Sacramento Valley farming is being fallowed. Mostly that's rice farming, but you're seeing a lot of fallowing take place there. You're seeing most of the temporary non-permanent crops, so row crops in the South Delta and the San Joaquin Valley in Kern County area. Most of that's being fallowed as well, and there'll probably be a higher percentage. So about, when you think about it, these rice farmers have very high water priority, very, probably the most significant water rights in the state, most of them. Many of them have pre-1914 rights. And when you're seeing 20% fallowing there, most of the south of the Delta, those are more junior right holders, farmers. And so you're probably going to see something in the range of 30% plus fallowing in the San Joaquin Valley. And so you'll see a lot of press and a lot of attention politically in Sacramento will be given to that, because there are going to be significant impacts in the environmental and in the agricultural community, significant impacts environmentally as well, trying to maintain cold water pool for salmon. So you're going to see a lot of political influence on, attention paid to the drought, but the attention will be primarily on the agricultural sector in the Central Valley and environmental impacts due to the small cold water pool and just how much water available for salmon and other fisheries. One of the ways Metropolitan's been looking at, are there things we can help out? Obviously, it's very difficult for us there with a 5% allocation to do much, if anything, within California, other than the issues Devin talked about protecting our own service area and certain pockets of our area that rely primarily on state project water. But on the Colorado, when we were talking with staff, one of the tools that came up is our Palo Verde program. So as you know, we have a significant amount of water stored in Lake Mead, which is called intentionally created surplus. Metropolitan has stored over 1 million acre feet in Lake Mead, about 1.2 million acre feet, maybe a little more than that. And we have the right to store a little over 1.5 million acre feet. So we're pretty close to tapping out our storage account in Lake Mead. And because we were getting that close and because we'd had significant water reserves elsewhere, one of the strengths of our program with Palo Verde Valley is it's got flexibility built into it. Some people have negotiated take or pay deals where they get the water every single year. What we did with Palo Verde was to create a more flexible program where at Metropolitan's discretion, we determine how much of the how much of the valley to fallow that's enrolled in the program. And so because of our bank account in Lake Mead was fairly full, we decided a year ago, when we make our 2-year call on fallowing, that we would do it at a lower level. We fallowed it at a 40% level. And the farmers, they talk to us, they like it when we fallow more closer to 80% because that gives them a guaranteed revenue, and then they farm the rest of their land. So they like the guaranteed revenue that Metropolitan provides. And so they kind of lobbied us for that we would have a higher call. We thought about it, but given Metropolitan's interest, we declined and put a 40% call in. We had been working with other urban entities and the United States Bureau of Reclamation on backing up water into Lake Mead through a program we call system conservation, where Metropolitan and the urban entities, primarily Central Arizona Project and Southern Nevada Water Authority, we pooled money. We were matched by Bureau of Reclamation, and then we looked for projects that would conserve water. And rather than keeping the water in Metropolitan's name or in Southern Nevada's name, because the United States was a partner, that water was kept in Lake Mead as what we call system conservation, helping the overall system. So we talked to Southern Nevada, the Bureau of Reclamation, and Central Arizona Project. Would they be interested in using Metropolitan's Palo Verde program, join us in sharing the costs of that? We would then talk to the farmers and bump it up to maybe a higher lump number, like 80%. And while Metropolitan would keep the 40% of the water that we're paying for. The other 40% could be backed up into Lake Mead and help the whole system as system conservation. Well, all the parties thought that was a terrific idea, and they wanted to partner with us. We talked to the farmers in Palo Verde Valley. They like the idea as well. So if the board is willing, what we would do is we'd enter into the 3 lower states would cost share, the state's share of this, which would be 50%. So Metropolitan would be 1/3 of half of this. And then the United States Bureau of Reclamation would come up with the funding for the other half. We would ask the farmers who've already been on a 40% notice to voluntarily increase if they wish to, up to a maximum of 80%. And then we would generate that water and it would go into Lake Mead. Over the next 2 years, assuming we got maximum input, you could put about 100,000 acre feet into Lake Mead, maybe a little more. And that would be, and Metropolitan would be paying roughly 1/6 of that amount, the third of our half, the state's share. And so relatively economic and also a good way in which we can all partner together to kind of help Lake Mead. So we put that on our agenda. It's item 7-9, and that's one of the drought actions we're taking on the Colorado. The rest of it, sort of a management type approach to it that Devin's already walked through that we're working on the state side. So I'm going to pause there on drought and drought actions. There's a couple other board items I thought I'd mention, but I thought I'd pause there, Patrick, and board members and take questions as you see fit, if there are any.
Thank you, Jeff. Any questions?
None from me. Director Deere?
No, thank you.
Okay, back to you, Patrick.
None for me either. Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, Gloria. Sorry. I just got
Thank you,
here.
President. Thanks.
Okay, we'll just kick it back to Jeff, then to continue, Jeff.
Okay, 2 items on the agenda I thought I'd just bring to your attention. Last month, we brought an information item to the board about our LRP program. As people are aware, our local resource project, Metropolitan, co-funds with member agencies, development of projects. And when the board authorizes entering into an LRP agreement with member agency, they have so many years in which to bring their project online. And what we're seeing for a number of reasons in recent times is it's been more difficult to bring things online. And many of these are related to the pandemic. Construction, social distancing, starting new projects, getting permits. We're also seeing there's also some fallout from the various tariffs that went into place in terms of getting supply chain disruptions, coupled with the pandemic, price of steel, raising construction prices, demand throughout, everywhere in building. And so we're seeing a lot of programs and a lot of supply chain issues and construction related issues. And we've had a number of member agencies say they are going to need more time to bring their projects online. The board always had the discretion to grant more time on a case-by-case, project-by-project basis. Last month, we took an information letter to the board saying, do you just want to grant staff the ability to handle all this on its own and just grant sort of a blanket, all LRP projects get extension? Number of questions and concerns with that broad approach by the board. So instead, we're bringing them back on a case-by-case basis for board action. And so we have 4 items, 4 projects right now that are going to be wrapped up into a board letter. You should be seeing that hit your desk probably this afternoon or tomorrow. It should be posted. And we're just going to take them project by project. We bundled 4 in this letter and asked the board to grant extensions to all of them due to experiences that they're having and delaying bringing their projects on board. So that's one item. It's item 7-7. And so that'll be coming out to the board, and happy to take questions on that. And then the last item I wanted to bring to your attention is an informational item we're bringing to the board. And it's a proposal from IEUA, Inland Empire, working with the Chino Basin. What they want to do is to put together a recycled water program, bringing water into their basin to be added to their basin after it's been highly purified. They're looking for state funding as a proposed project for this. And what they're hoping to, and the way they want to get state funding out of it was Proposition 1 storage program funding. What they wanted to do was to be able to provide environmental benefits to the Delta by exchanging water back with other state water project contractors, and possibly Metropolitan. So while we've made no commitment on whether or not what Metropolitan would do with IEUA on this project, we did commit to discussing it with them and supporting their concept as they work with the state. And so we sent a letter to that effect, and we wanted to make sure that the board was aware of it and understand that we will be bringing forward eventually, as if IEUA gets their grant funding, proposals on how we can help support that and provide benefits to all the member agencies as well. So wanted to bring those two items to your attention, and again, then see if there's any questions at this point. If there aren't questions, then I thought I would ask Kitano. I know she's on the line. I don't think there's an action item in June on the rate refinement process as well as the demand management discussions, but I thought she could update you on, at least on terms of where the member agencies are on that. So if there, I'll again ask. Okay, go ahead, Kitano. Why don't you do that, and then we'll take questions.
I hope you can hear me clearly. So we slowed down a little bit. I was trying to bring an informational report for June to go over where we are with the member agencies, but it's going to take us at least one more meeting with the member agencies in June before we can have a draft recommendation to the board. So I plan on bringing comprehensive, hopefully comprehensive information report in July for demand management. And we will also bring back the guiding principles that you saw in May. We will bring those to be adopted by the board. We didn't have a lot of comments from the board, so we hope to bring those for adoption. So that's where we are. So we have one more meeting, and then hopefully we'll bring it to the board by July.
And with that, President Deere and Director Williams, happy to take any questions on any of those items that we've brought forward.
Actually, Director Williams is the president. I'm the vice president.
Okay.
Well, I thought you were president emeritus.
I probably should. Are there
I
questions?
don't think we have any questions.
Well, then the last thing I thought I'd just mention, and this is something that's probably, all the agencies are working with this now, is it looks pretty clear that, good news on the pandemic front. California is doing pretty well, but obviously we've seen around the world still significant challenges. There's been spikes, resurgences, et cetera. But it looks as if California is on track, that the governor, at current approach is that they'll be lifting the state of emergency come June 15. Assuming that goes through, which is really just a couple weeks away, Metropolitan will be following suit, and we're going to be reopening just like the rest of California. So what does that mean? It means we're going to start making arrangements and working with the chairwoman on terms of our next committee meetings and board meetings. We expect to be having them in person certainly by August and start moving those forward. We're also looking at bringing in employees. We're probably going to be doing this on a gradual basis in case we don't want to do this in fits and starts. I think there created a lot of challenges throughout California as we went through a number of fits and starts, with spikes going back and forth and resurgences. But given, the vaccination rate and everything, it seems pretty confident that we're on a course towards reopening. So we're going to basically take the July through October quarter it will certainly be the recommendation of HR, obviously working with the new general manager once he or she's in place, on how to implement that and probably do it. And what Metropolitan's planning on doing is a gradual reopening, July, August, September, and then heading into a more permanent hybrid approach starting October 1. And so that's at least our tentative plan. We're going to start bringing employees back in the workplace in the July, August, September on a gradual basis, bringing them in group by group on a partial hybrid basis, where they'll work from home a couple days a week, be in the office a few days a week. And we're going to work that through July, August, September, reopening for board meetings over the summer, and be continue to reopen as we get through towards October. And then we're going to be in position to either fully reopen or permanently go hybrid. And that'll obviously be a discussion with the board and the new general manager to see what course of action is finally implemented there. And that's the full update on Metropolitan business, on the items that we have at the June board meeting. And again, happy to take any questions for myself or staff. I don't know, Devin, I know I already had Catano talk to the rate refinement process. Devin, if there are any other items that you want to bring forward?
Not really, Jeff. You've done a great job.
Okay, well, President Deere and Patrick, any questions or anything you want us to touch on?
Certainly not for me. I think you did a pretty comprehensive job. I didn't hear any questions, so that speaks to how well everything has been covered. So back to President Williams, I think we can go to the next item, item 4B, which is the legislative update by EJ Caldwell.
Okay, go for it, EJ.
Yes, thank you very much, President Williams, Patrick, members of the board, as well as all of our guests today. I just want to set the table for you a little bit as far as where we are in the legislative year. Here we are at the very start of June, and all this week, both houses will only be holding their floor sessions, seeking to meet those deadlines, because June 4th is the last day for a House of Origin to pass out those bills. So you will see a lot of activity for those of you who are tracking bills. You'll see quite a bit happening this week. And then, of course, June 15th is the constitutional deadline for a budget bill to be passed by the legislature. Now, I mentioned that because just yesterday, some pretty significant news came out of Sacramento. Both the Assembly and the Senate leadership announced a budget agreement. But what was interesting about that budget agreement was that it did not include Governor Newsom. So both houses had agreed to a structural budget, and they are now working out the details. But what we have learned is that the bill or the proposal does expand on what Governor Newsom was proposing. It is actually a larger budget than the record high budget proposed in the May revise by Governor Newsom, and that was approximately $267 billion. So to go above that, we can see a bit of a significant push as far as these programs go. In the press release announced by both the Assembly and the Senate, it was announced that this is a once-in-a-generation chance to make transformational change in California. And they were seeking to do that with the assistance of all of the federal funding that they've received, as well as positioning different payments to individual families as far as the COVID relief go as an expense rather than, or excuse me, as a loss of revenue rather than as an expense. And then I also want to point out that obviously several of our agencies and of course Metropolitan Water District has really been tracking the Senate as well as the governor's proposals when it comes to drought preparation, because the Senate Pro Tem very early on in the budget negotiations announced that she would be putting together a package that would not just address the current drought, but get ahead of the drought to really make those investments in infrastructure. So in looking at the proposal, we don't have all of the details. We do know that the proposal does include $1 billion for retail bill arrearages. This is something that we've all been tracking. I know that there's legislation related to this. There was some extensive discussion at the federal level about how to provide assistance, ratepayer assistance. So it looks like there will be $1 billion there through the State Water Resources Control Board, the details of which also need to be negotiated. And then, of course, the budget proposal does include $3.7 billion to address water supply infrastructure. And what's notable about this $3.7 billion is that that is the exact number that was included in Governor Newsom's May revise. So while several of the programs, as outlined by the Assembly and the Senate Comprehensive Agreement, have been increased, we are not yet seeing an increase in the investments in water supply infrastructure. I expect those discussions and negotiations to continue on. Obviously, June 15th is looming, so we should see some action before then. But I believe in an announcement today, Governor Newsom noted that his administration was not part of those negotiations and had not yet agreed upon anything. So I think there's a great deal of work still to be done. I also wanted to highlight a couple of different bills. And again, this is with the reminder that June 4th is the last day for each house to pass bills that originated in their house. And the first bill is Senate Bill 480 by Senator Stern. As you remember, this bill requires MWD to adopt rules relating to inappropriate conduct and is just one of the requested actions that have been brought about through Metropolitan Water District's ongoing investigation and audit, internal audit, as well as several of the requests from throughout Southern California and LA County about the employee concerns related to activities there at Metropolitan Water District. And I point this out because the bill currently sits on the Senate floor. That bill would need to be moved by the author, Senator Stern, by that June 4th deadline. And I want to put a little context into it because due to the ongoing COVID pandemic and limitations as far as hearings go and kind of the slow process in which the legislature was really able to jump into their actions, both houses, the Assembly and the Senate, have set a 12-bill limit for each of their legislators. Now, most legislators have introduced far more than 12 bills and are slowly working on more than 12 bills. However, each house will only pass out 12 bills from each author. And so whether Senator Stern really wants to use Senate Bill 480 as one of those bills is going to be obviously a question of his priorities. So we're going to continue to track that. Obviously, something must be done this week. If not, if the bill sits on the Senate floor, it'll become a 2-year bill, and the senator will have an opportunity to move it possibly next year. The second item, and somewhat related, is the request of a joint legislative audit introduced by several members of both the Assembly and the Senate. Again, we've been tracking this, continue to track all of the agendas from the Joint Legislative Audit Committee. They do have 2 upcoming hearings. One is June 30th, and the other is August 20th. However, no agendas have been made, and no decision that we are aware of has been made as to whether the audit request will move forward. But again, West Basin does utilize the services of Niemela Pappas and Associates in Sacramento, and we are keeping a very close eye on that item. And last but not least, I wanted to highlight Assembly Bill 1195. This bill obviously relating to water in South LA County. And as you recall, the West Basin Board of Directors did discuss this item at our last board meeting. At that time, the board adopted a watch position based off of the amendments that Assemblywoman Garcia had introduced on the bill, seeking to work with all of the different stakeholders. And I just wanted to highlight that bill did pass off the Assembly floor by a vote of 50 to 12. In doing so, Speaker Rendon spoke on the bill, spoke in favor of it, mentioned that the bill was a much needed safeguard to providing safe and affordable drinking water to constituents in LA County. And as such, this bill will now be moving over to the Senate, where Senate rules will assign it to several different committees. We've been working with Metropolitan Water District, specifically Kathy Viatella. We notified her immediately once our board took our action. We are aware of Metropolitan Water District's opposed unless amended position on the bill. That position was adopted prior to the amendments that were put through. And in email correspondence with Kathy, she did note that the bill is looking like it's going in the right direction. So that's a very positive thing. There are still concerns related to some of the water rights issues. They were not adequately addressed. But I did want to point this out because in our conversations with Assemblywoman Garcia and her staff, as well as the speaker's staff, they did mention that that water rights issue might need to go through several different iterations as far as drafting and moving through the amendments. But she did pledge her willingness to continue to work with all of the stakeholders to address those concerns. So we do continue to work on this bill, and we are, I think, looking at it as an opportunity to kind of mold this bill. She seems like she's very willing to do that. And so again, West Basin staff and our consultants will continue to work with Kathy there in Sacramento in hopes of finding a favorable outcome. But West Basin staff will be bringing this item back, Assembly Bill 1195, to each of our committee meetings, our water policy and legislation committees, in case there is cause for West Basin to amend its position. So with that, Mr. President, that's all I really have for you today, but I am happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, EJ. Any questions? Looks like none. Great job again there, EJ. Thank you. Now, that takes us to item number, I think 5 has already been covered. Is that right, Mr.
Right.
General Manager?
Yeah, items 5 and 6 have both been covered already.
Okay, so that takes us to item 7. And
Yes.
it says that adjournment. Any objections? Hearing none, we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good meeting.
Thank you.
Bye.